Ladies and gentlemen, I've had a number of you messaging me asking whether the 500 series is worthy of purchase, since the official reviews are out and quite frankly my time is limited, as many people know regarding my personal circumstances. If not, I'll give a quick reminder at the end of this video. Well, I decided just to put this out to give my thoughts and impressions of the cards thus far. So, what do we have with the RX 500 series? Well, essentially it is exactly identical to the rumours. So basically it is Polaris but with small tweaks here and there. It is built on a slightly more advanced FinFET process, and this basically allows AMD to pump out the GPU core at higher clock speeds. Naturally, this in turn means that you're going to get higher levels of performance because all other things being equal, if you simply crank up the clock speeds on the same architecture, naturally performance goes up. The good news is these cards don't cost any more than the 400 series. The bad news is that, as we kind of suspected, because there are no architectural tweaks here, and because the clock speed boosts are not, say, going from 1266 MHz to, let's say, 1800, therefore they're fairly modest unless you're going for the really high overclocked variants, which we'll get to in a second. Performance increases are pretty small. That's not to say they're not noticeable, but we'll go through a couple of them in this video just to give you an example. For example, Tom's hardware, if you were to take a look at the Division, then performance boosts are quite modest. We're looking at something along the lines of 5-ish frames a second from the 580 to the 480, which is not particularly spectacular. Similarly, the 570 gets 59 frames a second compared to the 470's 54 frames a second. Other titles like The Witcher, which obviously is quite GPU intensive, then 76 frames a second compared to the 480 8GB 70 frames a second. So once again, it's, margin of error not quite, it's slightly higher than that, but it's not certainly going to set the world alight by any stretch of the imagination. And this could also be seen in, let's say, Rise of the Tomb Raider. From AnandTech, we can see the 580 gets 51 frames a second at 1440p. Whereas on the other hand, the 480 hits around 49 frames a second. The 570 hits 45 frames a second, the 470, 43 frames a second. Now, I could certainly be here all day reading out all of the frame rates in the universe, but we'll take one more just, for shits and giggles. Doom, and we'll go with a nice resolution of 1440p, which obviously puts more strain on the GPU. You're looking at 60 frames a second-ish for 1440p, whereas on the other hand, the factory overclocked, I just want to repeat that once again, factory overclocked Sapphire RX 580 Nitro Plus 8GB with the quiet mode enabled gets 64, whereas on the other hand with Boost, you're looking at around 65. There are a couple of things which immediately strike me with these cards. First thing, it looks to me like the 580 does require a little bit more memory bandwidth. Unfortunately, I don't have a card to play around with and, tweak around with the clock speeds of the GPU and the memory clocks, but it does look like that could be the thing. I would possibly say the best value for money might be the 570, because it does have one benefit, other than, well, it being cheaper, and that is a substantial increase in memory bandwidth compared to its predecessor. So, if we were to, for example, take the 480, it has 8 gigabits per second memory 8 gigabits per second modules, which is exactly the same as the 580. However, the 570 has 7, whereas the 470 has 6.6 Gbps. So in other words, they've increased it quite nicely, as well as a modest, certainly not massive or spectacular, but a modest boost clock increase as well. In other words, these parts do perform better compared to their predecessors, which is nice given the price point. You're looking at $170 US for the 570, which is about $10 cheaper than what the 470s went in at back in launch at, well, pretty much this time last year. So that's good. That's a nice price for the card. The main issue is that they are facing stiff competition with the GTX 1060, which, to be honest with you, trades blows. Full disclosure, we do have a GTX 1060, which we will be reviewing over the next few days. Well, more specifically, Amy will be reviewing over the next few days, most likely. We have the Zotac model, which is a rather nice card. The problem is, of course, there is no win with the GTX 1060 and 470 or 480 or what have you, simply because, quite frankly, it does depend upon the game, what you're looking for, and all of that other jazz. So, you know, if you're thinking to yourself, well, dude, that doesn't really answer much, well, unfortunately, it's a pretty clear-cut situation. If you have not upgraded quite yet to Polaris and you own an old GPU, excuse me, let's say for the sake of this video you own a GTX 760, then now is the time to buy. By all means, rush out and buy a 580 or what have you. On the other hand, if you already own a pretty good GPU and you're waiting for a replacement, like a high-end replacement from AMD, this is just not it. So if you're looking for, let's say, the 1070 range or above, well, unfortunately, the 1070 is pretty much all you can buy. Incidentally, very off topic, we are putting out a GTX 1070 review today, so feel free to check that out. It's once again a Zotac Amp Extreme Edition. Really nice card. Bit of a shame we had to send it back. I was like, give it to me. I love it. But no, it's a really nice card on a serious note. So yeah, basically this is not going to replace Vega. It is, however, a little cheaper than the previous cards. They you know, about $10 than the previous generation. So a nice GPU. Isn't spectacular, isn't going to set the world alight, but is a nice incremental update for AMD and should coexist rather nicely alongside Vega. So that's pretty much my thoughts on that. Just for those who have not seen the previous video, I just want to reiterate I'm going through some personal circumstances at the moment regarding my mum. She's personal warning, so you know, if you don't want to know this stuff, feel free to jump off the video now. But basically she's just going through the final stages of cancer. So yeah, there is no cure. So basically the end is pretty much inevitable. So at the moment I'm spending most of my time either at the hospice, where she's kind of, you know, living out her final few days, or I'm like, you know, taking care of paperwork, that type of stuff. But if anyone knows me in real life, they'll know that I kind of escape into work, so this is kind of like a break for me. So I'm still trying my best to keep up on top of the tech news and everything else, because quite frankly, it's a good mental break for me. Anyway, once again, I'm probably not going to mention this again, what's happening after this video. Quite frankly, I don't know when I'll next be producing content. Obviously, it just depends on what's happening. I don't want to be super depressing about this, so that's about it. However, I do, just before I sign off, want to thank everyone for all of the messages of support who have, you know, nudged me via Facebook. I apologise, I've not been able to get back to people just because of how ludicrously busy everything is at the moment, as you can probably guess. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It's greatly appreciated. Love you all. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.